We'll now look at our second set of equations that involve elimination. This section will involve mixtures, where we look at percentages. And a chemist is mixing two different types of solutions. So we're going to say that X is the 70% solution and Y is the 40% solution. So we know that we need to obtain 120 gallons. So we're going to have X plus Y is equal to 120 gallons. And we also need to take 50% solution of that 120 gallons. So we're also going to take 50% of that 120. So we're going to have our 70%, 7/10 X plus 4/10 Y, and here would be our two equations. So we would have X plus Y is equal to 120, and we would have 7/10 X plus 4/10 Y equals 60, because when you take the 50% of 120, we get 60. So you need to decide which variable you want to eliminate. So I'm just going to roll with eliminating the X variable. And so I'm going to multiply the top equation by 7/10. So everything in the top equation is multiplied by 7/10. And that will give me 7/10 X plus 7/10 Y. And 7/10 times 120 should be 84. And then I'm going to rewrite my second equation down here. So 7/10 X plus 4/10 Y equals, that's 60. Let me find my eraser. And that should be 60. So since your coefficients of X are the same, we can subtract. So if we subtract, we lose the X's. 7/10 minus 4/10, we get 3/10 Y, and that will equal 24. So when you divide by 3/10, you get Y to equal 80. All right, what does that mean? Well, that means that the 40% solution had 80 gallons, and the 70% solution, I don't know yet, and that should equal the 60 gallons. Just running out of room there. So I need to solve for, so I've got X plus 80 equals 120, and X should be 40. So what I have is 40 gallons at 70% plus 80 gallons at 40%, and that should equal the 120, 50% of 120. And 80 plus 40 gives me the 120. And this is going to give me 28 and 32. And that's 50 and 10, so that's 60 equals 60. So what is your solution? It would be written as an ordered pair of 40, 80 as your solution. Second problem. pharmacist mixes two different solutions of peroxide. She mixes a 1% and a 9%. So we're going to call X to equal, we'll say 1, and we'll say Y is going to be the 9%. So we also have 60 milliliters. So we know we're going to have so much milliliters of the 1%, so much milliliters of the 9%, and that's going to give us the 60 milliliters. And then we know that whatever we find, how many milliliters of 1% plus how many at 9% should be the 4% of the 60. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and eliminate X just by choice. So I'm going to multiply everything in the first equation by 10%. So everything, and that's going to give me 1/100th X plus 1/100th Y equals 6/10. And then this 60 times 4/100 will be 2 4/10. And so I'm just going to rewrite this equation down here. And eliminate X. So since the signs are the same and the coefficients are the same, we can subtract. So we eliminate X. And looks like we're going to get negative. So 1/10 take away 1/100th take away 9/100ths. We get negative 8/100ths Y. And then if we take 6/10 take away 2 4/10, we get negative 1 8/10. So if we divide both sides by negative 8/10, we should get 22.5. Well, remember, that's from up here, that's how many of each type of solution, how many milliliters. Well, of the 9%, we're going to have 22.5. So if we take the 60, just in my page here, if we take the 60 and subtract 22.5, we're going to get 37.5. So back to our two original equations, we're going to have, we had X plus Y equals 60. Well, Y was 22.5 and X was 37.5, and that should both equal to 60. And if you take 1/10 of 1/100th of 37.5 plus 9/100ths of 22.5, we should get what we had up here, which was 2 4/10. So if you do, go ahead and do the multiplication, and we get 375 thousandths, and the 9/100ths times 22.5, and we get 2 25/100ths, and when you add those together, you're going to get the 2.4, 2 4/10, which is what we said we would get up here. Okay, so final answer was how many of each type of solutions. So we would have X to be 37.5, comma, Y to be 22.5. Question, the next question is dealing with a investment, and where we're investing so much money. So I got a total of $12,000 into two funds. So I know I've got one fund plus another fund, and it's going to be a total of $12,000. And I know I've got one fund that's going to pay out interest of 9%. So I'm going to change 9% to, I think I had that right the first time. So I'm going to change the 9% to and 11% Y, and I have an interest payout of $1,180. So there's my system, and I'm just going to go ahead and eliminate X. You know, we could eliminate Y if we chose, but everybody's choice as they go through their problems. So I'm going to multiply this top equation by 9%, or 9/100ths. So that's going to give me 9/100ths X plus 9/100ths Y is equal to, and when I multiply 12,000 times 9/100ths, I get 1,080. And then I've got my original that I'm just going to rewrite. And since the X coefficients are the same and same sign, I'm going to subtract. And then I subtract here, I'm going to get a negative 2/100ths Y. And then I subtract that, I'm going to get negative 100. So I divide both sides by negative 2/100ths. And Y will equal 5,000. What does that mean? Well, so much we invested in the two funds, and so Y being, if X is the 9% and Y is the 11%, we invested $5,000 in the 11% fund. So if we know we've invested 5,000, so we're going to go back up here, and we knew we had X plus Y equals 12,000. Well, now Y is 5,000, so X plus 5,000 equals 12,000. So X is going to equal 7,000. So what's our solution? $7,000 invested into the 9%, $5,000 invested into the 11%. This was the 9% and this was the 11%, would be our solution. Next example, we're looking at another investment where we'll say X is the 18% and Y would equal the 9%. And so we invested $7,500. So again, we've got so much plus so much is going to equal 7,500. And we're looking at interest earned. And we know that interest earned was $774. So we know that 18% of the amount invested and 9% of the amount invested should give us 774 with interest. And here's our system. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate X, which means I'm going to multiply the top equation by 18/100ths. So remember, everything is multiplied by 18/100ths. That's going to give me 18/100ths X plus 18 hundredths y, and that's 18 hundredths times 75 hundredths, and that should be 576. And then I'm going to rewrite my second equation down here. So 18 hundredths x plus 9 hundredths y is 774. And that's an incorrect right there. That 18 hundredths times 75 hundredths. I had the wrong, I skipped a step there. So that's 1,350. 18 hundredths times x, 1800 times y, 18 hundredths times 7,500 is 1,350. So again, I said I wanted to eliminate x. So when I subtract, that disappears. And this will give me 9 hundredths y. And I do the subtraction here. 1,350 minus 774 should give me 576. And then I divide both sides by 9 hundredths, and I get y is equal to 6,400. Now, what does that mean? That means that there was 6,400 invested in the 9%. So the remaining would be our original equation, which was x plus y equals 7,500. So x plus 6,400 is equal to 7,500. And when you subtract, you get x to equal $1,100. So $1,100 in the 9% fund and 6,400. I think I had that backwards. 9%, 6,400 in the 9% and 1,100 in the 18%. And that would be your system, which final one of this series. And we're looking at two different types of coffee beans. And we're going to have X to be expensive. And we're going to have Y to be the cheap brand. So in this case, we know that the expensive is 8Y. Or excuse me, 8x. So 8x for the expensive plus 4y, because y was the cheaper, and that's going to be that's how much per pound, and we know that it's $6.40 for 50 pounds. And then we know we've got x plus y to equal our 50 pounds. So if we take $6.40 times 50 bags, we're actually going to get 320. And then we have x plus y is equal to 50. And here's our system. And so I'm going to eliminate x. So that means I'm going to multiply the second equation by 8. So second equation, 8 is multiplied by everything. So I'm going to have my top equation, 8x plus 4y equals 320. And 8x plus 8y is equal to 400. And I'm going to subtract since the coefficients are the same. Of course, we said if the coefficients were ever opposite signs, it would be a good idea to add those. But in this case, the coefficients are the same, so we're going to subtract. So 8x minus 8x disappears. 4 minus 8 I get negative 4y. And 320 take away 400, I'm at negative 80. And we're talking about pounds coffee, so that can't be negative, so be careful with your signs. So y would equal 20. And if we remember, we go back to our original, we had x plus y equals 50. So x plus 20 equals 50. So what we said x would be the more expensive. About 30 pounds of the most expensive. So our solution would be 30, 20. And it said how many of each type of coffee beans would be used to create 50 pounds of the mixture. We have 30 at the expensive, 30 pounds of the expensive coffee, 20 pounds of the cheaper.